Going silent is often misunderstood as retreat, punishment, or emotional withdrawal. In truth, silence is a reset that interrupts patterns built on over-explaining and over-giving. When you stop narrating your feelings and stop seeking reassurance, the dynamic recalibrates. You are no longer managing the connection for two people at once. This pause removes the emotional background noise that kept him comfortable and passive. Silence creates contrast, and contrast is what awakens awareness. He notices the space where your energy used to smooth everything over. That awareness cannot arrive when you are constantly present and emotionally accessible. Silence allows reality to surface without commentary or persuasion. It exposes whether connection existed because of mutual desire or constant effort. Emotional recalibration begins the moment you stop filling every gap with words. No more clarifying texts, no more follow-ups, no more checking the temperature. You step out of the role of emotional caretaker and into self-respect. This is not about being cold, distant, or strategically mysterious. It is about removing the safety net that prevented growth and initiative. When silence replaces explanation, accountability has room to emerge. He must confront his own level of investment without your guidance. The absence of your emotional labor highlights its previous value. What once felt normal suddenly feels missing and unfamiliar. That internal shift is where reflection quietly begins. Silence also recalibrates you, not just him, and this is the hidden power. You begin to notice how much energy you were spending to maintain momentum. The nervous urge to fix, chase, or clarify starts to fade. In its place comes emotional steadiness and grounded perspective. You reconnect with your standards instead of your anxiety. This space restores your ability to observe rather than react. You stop measuring your worth by response, time, or consistency. Silence becomes a boundary that protects your emotional balance. From this position, you no longer fear outcomes or silence itself. You see the connection more clearly without emotional distortion. When silence is rooted in self-respect, it carries a different emotional signal. It does not scream insecurity or attempt to provoke a reaction. It quietly communicates that access to you is not automatic. This distinction matters because attraction responds to emotional maturity. You are not withholding to gain leverage, but stepping back to regain alignment. That alignment shifts the emotional tone of the connection. He senses the difference even if he cannot immediately name it. The energy feels calmer, firmer, and less negotiable. Silence becomes a statement rather than a strategy. It changes how your presence is remembered and anticipated. Many people talk themselves out of silence by fearing misinterpretation. They worry it will seem rude, immature, or emotionally unsafe. Yet constant explanation often does more damage than quiet clarity. Overcommunication dilutes impact and weakens emotional polarity. Silence allows actions and absence to speak without distortion. It prevents you from chasing validation through understanding. This restraint strengthens your emotional position. You no longer audition for care or attention. You allow others to meet you where they truly stand. That honesty is essential for any authentic connection. In this recalibrated space, expectations naturally realign without confrontation. You are not demanding change or requesting reassurance. You are observing behavior without emotional interference. Silence gives time for patterns to reveal themselves. It separates temporary confusion from consistent intention. You gain clarity without sacrificing dignity. This form of silence is active, not passive. It is rooted in awareness rather than avoidance. From here, decisions feel calmer and more self-directed. The connection is no longer carried by effort alone. The moment you choose to go silent, the next steps determine the impact more than the silence itself. Silence alone is neutral. It becomes powerful only when paired with deliberate action, shifting from constant availability to a presence grounded in value changes the emotional dynamic. Instead of watching, waiting, or hoping for validation, you redirect focus inward. You invest in your passions, your goals, and your personal growth. This redirection communicates a message louder than words. You are not endlessly accessible. Your energy now belongs to you, not the constant management of someone else's attention. He begins to notice that connection is no longer automatic or predictable. Value is not declared, it is demonstrated through selective presence. This subtle yet firm shift awakens curiosity and rekindles respect. Being present based on worth rather than hope elevates your emotional position. It signals that you are complete without external approval. Your actions are no longer reactions to his attention or absence. You are choosing engagement from a place of abundance rather than lack. This choice changes the magnetic pull of the relationship. He can sense when you are emotionally invested versus when you are merely available. Your presence becomes something to earn rather than a right to take. The dynamics shift naturally because you are no longer participating in the imbalance. Confidence is communicated quietly through consistent boundaries. This invisible authority draws respect and attention without confrontation or drama. When you focus on your value, you stop overextending for temporary connection. You stop filling emotional gaps that aren't yours to manage. This allows space for clarity to emerge on both sides. He begins to see what he took for granted, not through lectures, but through absence. Your time, attention, and energy now hold weight because they are limited. When you are selective in your engagement, every interaction carries significance. You create a natural pull by showing that connection is not an entitlement. This doesn't mean playing games or manipulating outcomes. It means embodying self-respect and intentionality in every choice. Your energy becomes magnetic because it is earned, not expected. Investing in your life while he experiences your absence shifts perspective quickly. You are focused on your own growth, your social life, and your emotional health. This shift communicates that your world is rich, complete, and fulfilling. He notices the contrast between your previous overavailability and your current groundedness. The gap invites reflection without pressure, guilt, or arguments. It also recalibrates your emotional dependence, strengthening your sense of autonomy. Your silence, paired with purposeful presence, creates a quiet power. He begins to reassess his priorities, intentions, and investment. When your energy is scarce, its impact is magnified. This is the essence of influence rooted in self-respect rather than manipulation. Shifting from availability to value-based presence transforms both perception and attraction. People are naturally drawn to those who maintain standards and boundaries. The presence of confidence communicates competence and self-worth. It subtly conveys that attention is a privilege, not a given. By focusing on your life rather than chasing validation, you reclaim control. You no longer measure your worth by response or attention from others. Instead, your value is lived and observed through actions, priorities, and consistency. This form of presence strengthens your emotional foundation. It allows relationships to evolve based on mutual effort and genuine desire. The dynamic is no longer reactive, but intentional, shifting the emotional balance. As your life grows richer and more fulfilling, the relationship begins to recalibrate naturally. He experiences your absence while your presence carries significance. Every interaction now carries intentional energy rather than default participation. You show that engagement is a choice, not a routine. This subtle demonstration of worth changes the way he approaches connection. He begins to recognize patterns of neglect versus appreciation. Your energy is now aligned with your standards, not someone else's inconsistency. This alignment fosters respect, curiosity, and renewed investment. Being selectively present reinforces your value in ways words cannot. The emotional space you create becomes a mirror for mutual growth and desire. When you stop initiating, texting, or checking in, he begins to feel the emotional gap you once filled. This is not about punishment or creating anxiety. It's about letting reality surface naturally. Absence has a way of revealing patterns that words often fail to communicate. He starts to notice what was once invisible because you were always there to compensate. Every unanswered text, every unreturned call becomes a subtle mirror of his own investment. He realizes that the connection is no longer sustained by your energy alone. This is where reflection begins, quietly and without interference from explanations. When you step back, he is forced to confront whether he truly values what you offer. Absence allows him to measure effort against desire rather than habit. The emotional gap is where clarity emerges, not from lectures, but from experience. Feeling your absence awakens awareness that cannot be rushed or forced. He experiences moments when he notices you are not immediately available. Those moments create an internal dialogue about priorities and attention. It forces him to evaluate what he has taken for granted over time. Your presence, once constant, is now something to appreciate rather than assume. He begins to reflect on the energy, consistency, and warmth you consistently gave. Silence combined with absence communicates dignity and self-respect. It allows him to encounter the connection without being propped up by your reassurance. This method avoids conflict and avoids emotional manipulation while still being effective. The absence becomes an invisible teacher, showing lessons that words cannot. Dignity is the cornerstone of this process. It prevents absence from turning into coldness. You do not disappear to punish or test. You create space for genuine recognition. This ensures that any emotional response he has is authentic rather than coerced. Your withdrawal is measured, intentional, and calm, rooted in self-worth. It communicates that your energy is valuable and not to be taken lightly. By not chasing attention, you encourage him to take responsibility for his own engagement. The emotional gap highlights areas of neglect without you needing to point them out. He starts to feel what it's like when the emotional safety net you provided is gone. Absence allows accountability to emerge naturally rather than through confrontation. He begins to understand that consistency requires effort, not expectation. Experiencing the void also strengthens your own sense of independence. You step out of reactive patterns that kept you emotionally tethered. You reclaim your time, energy, and focus for your own growth and fulfillment. This creates a balance where your presence is felt rather than forced. By not overextending, you demonstrate that your connection is a choice, not an obligation. He senses that your world continues to thrive without relying on him for validation. The emotional gap is as much about teaching him as it is about centering yourself. You stop measuring your worth by responses or attention, restoring confidence and clarity. This recalibration strengthens your position emotionally, mentally, and energetically. It fosters mutual respect rather than dependency or habit-based attachment. When the emotional space is felt, he begins to reassess priorities and intentions. He notices patterns of neglect that were previously overlooked. The absence exposes gaps in effort versus investment, clarity versus complacency. He starts to consider whether he has truly appreciated your presence. This reflection is internal, often silent, but incredibly impactful. The emotional gap triggers evaluation that conversations alone rarely achieve. It forces him to confront the value of your energy, attention, and care. Your absence carries weight because it is purposeful and rooted in dignity. Every interaction moving forward is influenced by the awareness created in your absence. He begins to act differently, not because of coercion, but because of emotional recognition. This process transforms the way connection is perceived and experienced. Your presence becomes desired rather than expected. The emotional gap teaches lessons about responsibility and appreciation. He begins to feel a deeper recognition of what you consistently brought to the relationship. Absence is the vehicle for this awakening, not manipulation or pressure. It reshapes the dynamics by aligning emotional effort with true intention. You hold your energy intentionally, creating a natural pull that commands reflection. He starts to see that connection is a mutual exchange, not one-sided effort. Every choice he makes now carries weight because absence clarified boundaries. The experience of the void fosters genuine respect, recalibrated investment, and emotional clarity. The most powerful moment is not when he reaches out, but when you are no longer waiting for him. Returning to communication from a place of wholeness transforms the dynamic entirely. You are no longer responding from a place of hope, anxiety, or dependency. Your energy is grounded, calm, and self-respecting, and that energy is magnetic. This is the point where attraction resets, not through words, but through presence. He begins to notice the difference between the woman he once took for granted and the woman who now stands firm. You no longer explain the silence or apologize for boundaries that were necessary. Your value is evident through your composure, your clarity, and your priorities. This shift communicates strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. It allows him to see you as someone whose presence must be genuinely earned. When you re-enter from a position of completeness, your interactions carry weight. Every conversation, text, or encounter is filtered through self-respect rather than need. You are no longer reacting to his behavior, you are choosing how to engage with it. This creates an immediate change in perception, altering the emotional balance. He is drawn to the certainty and security you now radiate naturally. Your absence created reflection, and your return demonstrates that your world did not pause. By re-engaging from wholeness, you set the standard for how he should treat you moving forward. Your energy becomes the standard, not his inconsistent attention. This presence shifts the focus from emotional manipulation to mutual respect. He is forced to meet the new energy with intention rather than assumption. Returning from silence also communicates emotional intelligence and maturity. You do not react out of frustration or to provoke a response. Instead, you interact with awareness, knowing your worth and boundaries. This subtle authority creates intrigue and compels accountability. He begins to see the difference between a woman who chases and a woman who commands respect. Your energy is no longer negotiable or dependent on his whims. The calmness in your return demonstrates that you are in control of your emotions and actions. This power is silent but undeniable, affecting how he views and values the connection. He recognizes that the relationship is no longer carried by one-sided effort. Every interaction now requires intentionality on his part, creating balanced dynamics. By returning from a place of wholeness, you also reinforce your own confidence. You see yourself as independent and fulfilled, not waiting for validation. Your focus is on alignment rather than reaction, clarity rather than hope. This shift impacts the emotional landscape, making him aware of the standards he must meet. You communicate that love, attention, and effort are reciprocal, not obligations. Every boundary you maintain strengthens the magnetic pull rather than pushing him away. He experiences the value of your energy because it is no longer given freely without consideration. Your return demonstrates that your emotional presence is intentional and powerful. He begins to reassess his own actions, realizing the effort required to maintain your connection. The balance begins to restore itself naturally, guided by respect rather than expectation. This process transforms the entire relationship dynamic without confrontation. Your silence created awareness, and your return demonstrates composure and value. He now interacts with a woman whose presence is grounded in self-worth. Every choice he makes is now met with awareness and consideration rather than assumption. The dynamic shifts from reactive to intentional, creating a healthy tension and attraction. He feels your absence, and your return proves that your world continues regardless. This teaches him that connection is mutual, effort is required, and respect is non-negotiable. The energy you embody sets the tone for all future interactions. By re-entering from wholeness, you command respect, inspire reflection, and reset attraction naturally. Your presence now carries power that words alone could never convey.